This video is on approximating irrational numbers for our test review. These are the types of problems that you will see on tomorrow's test. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one number at a time and we're going to match it with the corresponding point and letter that's on the number line. So the first problem we have is 2 pi. When the pi symbol and the number are side by side, it means multiply. So we're really multiplying 2 times pi. We know that pi is represented by the number 3.14, and there's actually more numbers after that, but we typically round it to 3.14. If we multiply 2 times 3.14, we get 2 times 4, which gives us 8. 2 times 1 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 6.28. 6.28 is not quite 6.5, so we're going to go with letter S on our number line. Just higher than 6, but not so far as to be closer to 7. Now for our next problem, we have the square root of 42. We cannot solve the square root of 42. No number times itself will give us that answer. So we're going to break it down into what we can solve. We can solve the square root of 36, which is 6 times 6. And we can solve the square root of 49, which is 7 times 7. So our answer is going to be between 6 and 7. To go from 36 to 42, we would have to go up 6. To go from 42 to 49, we go up 5. So it's going to be closer to the 7 than it is the 6. The only other point on the number line between 6 and 7 is going to be letter T, because we already used letter S for 2 pi. For our next problem, we have the negative square root of 16. We know that 16 can be broken down into 4 times 4. And because we have the negative sign, we know that our answer is going to be a negative 4. The point located at negative 4 is represented by the letter B. For the next number, negative 2.75, we don't have to solve anything. We can just go straight to that point on the number line. So we go to negative 2, that's where we start. But because we have the decimal point, 0.75, we want to go farther than 2. So we're going to pick point D as negative 2.75. For the next problem, 13 over 3 is an improper fraction, so we're going to rewrite it. 3 can go into 13 4 times, because that would get us 12. And so we're left with 1 left over. So our answer would be 4 1/3. We start by going to 4 on the number line. Because we have a fraction, we go just a little bit past 4, which puts us at point P on the number line. For our next point, the negative square root of 3, we cannot solve square root of 3. No number times itself equals that, so we break it down. We can solve the square root of 1, which is 1 times 1. We can also solve the square root of 4, which is 2 times 2. Because we have the negative sign, we know that we're going to have a negative answer. And we want our answer to be somewhere between 1 and 2. So between negative 1 and negative 2, is point E on the number line. The next problem we have is the fraction 7/8. 7/8 is not quite 1 whole. It's very, very close. The whole number would be represented by 8 over 8. So we're very close to 1 whole. So we want the point that's closest to 1, which would be letter I. I is closest to 1 whole. Our next problem is the cubed root of 1/8. The cubed root of 1 is going to be 1. Because when we multiply 1 times 1 times 1, we get 1. The cubed root of 8 is going to be 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 again would give us 8. So 1/2 is our answer that we're going to place on the number line. 1/2 is between 0 and 1, right in the middle, which is represented by letter H. For the next problem, we have the negative square root of 4/9. The square root of 4 is going to give us 2, because we know that 2 times 2 is 4. The square root of 9 is going to give us 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. And because we have a negative sign, we know that that's going to be a negative 2/3. Negative 2/3 is not quite 1 whole, so we want it less than 1, which is going to put us at letter F on the number line. For the last problem on the top, we have negative 26/5. That is an improper fraction that we need to rewrite as a mixed number. 5 can go into 26 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25, meaning we have 1 left over. So 5 1/5 is our fraction. It's also negative, so we're going to go to the negative section of the number line. We're going to go a little bit greater than 5 because it's 5 and a fraction, 5 1/5, which gets us point A on the number line. Now, for the bottom half of the number line, we're going to start with 18 raised to the 7th raised to the 0 power. When our exponents are side by side, we multiply. 7 times 0 is 0, and we know that anything to the 0 power is 1. The point that's located on 1 is J. For the next problem, we have the square root of 15. We cannot solve the square root of 15, so we break that down into what we can solve. We can solve the square root of 9, which would be 3 times 3. And we can solve the square root of 16, which would be 4 times 4. We want our answer to be in between 3 and 4, which on the number line is represented by letter O. For the next problem, we have 5 times the square root of 1. 5 times the square root of 1, we start with our square root. The square root of 1 is 1. 1 times 1. 5 times 1 would give us an answer of 5. The point that is on the number 5 would be represented by the letter Q. For the next problem, we have the square root of 144/16. The square root of 144 is 12, because 12 times 12 is 144. The square root of 16 is 4, because 4 times 4 is 16. And then we can solve the fraction. 12 divided by 4 is 3. The point located on the number line at 3 is represented by the letter N. For our next problem, we have the square root of 32. We cannot solve the square root of 32. It is not on our list, so we break it down into what we can solve. 25 is smaller than 32, which we know is 5 times 5. 36 is larger than 32, which we know is 6 times 6. So we want the answer to be between 5 and 6. On the number line, the answer between 5 and 6 is represented by point R. The next problem, the square root of 2 raised to the 2nd power. Well, we know that 2 to the 2nd power is 2 times 2, which would give us 4. And we know that the square root of 4 would give us 2. 2 is our answer. The square root symbol and the exponent cancel each other out, and so all that's left is the whole number 2. On the number line, point 2 is represented by the letter L. For our next problem, we have the square root of 7. We cannot solve the square root of 7, as it is not on our perfect square list. No number times itself equals 7. So we break it down into what we can solve. We can solve the square root of 4, which is 2 times 2. We can also solve the square root of 9, which is 3 times 3. So we know our answer has to be between 2 and 3. That point on the number line is represented by letter M. For our next problem, it should actually be a 3 over 2. It misprinted when I made my copies, so it should be a 3 over 2. So when we solve 3 over 2, 3 over 2 is an improper fraction that we want to rewrite as a mixed number. 2 can go into 3 one time with 1 extra left over, so that would be 1 and 1/2. The point located between 1 and 2 is represented by point K. For our next problem, we have 0.3 repeating. 0.3 repeating as a fraction is written as 1/3. So we want our answer to be smaller than 1 but larger than 0. The only point that is left that we have not chosen between 0 and 1 is letter G. For the last problem, we have negative 3.36 repeating. So we go to negative 3 on the number line, and we go just past that so we can have our point in the middle. So negative 3.36 repeating is represented by the letter C on the number line.